Hello and welcome to another ABRSM Trinity live oral training session. And as before, if you haven't been with us in a previous live stream oral training session, what we're going to do today is go through a piece of music and ask questions that relate to all types of grades and like ABRSM and Trinity, all the way from grade 1 up to grade 8, using just one piece of music, which is a little bit more like the Trinity style of questions, just using one piece to ask lots of questions about. Now, in addition to that, I want you to participate. Otherwise, this live stream is not going to be so much fun and not so much benefit for yourselves. So we have already Dennis, who's introduced himself, and he's doing grade 1, okay, grade 1 piano. If anyone else would like to introduce themselves, just please participate in the chat session, okay? All right, there's Isabel, she's doing grade 6. And also, if you are joining this live stream halfway through and you missed the beginning, don't scroll back to the beginning, because then you can't participate. You'll be answering questions that are out of sync with what we're actually doing. You can always watch this at a later time after the live stream is finished and rewind it, okay? But always scroll forwards to the live moment so that you can actually participate. Okay, and welcome also to Sophie, or Softy, sorry, Softy Cuddles, not Sophie, Softy, and your name is Celine. Okay, grade 5 and a grade 8. So we've got a nice spectrum all the way from grade 1 all the way up to grade 8. It's good to have you all with us now. Now, how I normally start this is with a question that can suit everybody. It's actually a grade 8 question. It is comment on any features that you notice about this piece of music. So I'm going to play you a piece of music, and then doesn't matter what grade you're at. If you're grade 1, you can talk about the dynamics and the articulation. Or if you're in grade 5, 6, 7 and 8, you can talk about the character, the style, the texture, the structure. Musical features, any musical features that you notice. The thing is, with a grade 8 question, they don't ask you specific questions, they just ask you to comment generally on anything that you notice. So let's try one of those, okay? Just see if there's anyone. Komsomanichi, yes, you've been here before, so yeah, the grade 2 exam you're doing. And Laura, oh yeah, we mentioned Laura doing grade 8. Okay, so here is a piece of music, okay? And I want you to, in the chat, just write down anything that you notice, any musical features, okay? Okay, now the piece does go on for another 2 pages, but we're going to use that page there for our chat today. So let's have a little look what you've written down, okay? Now Dennis is saying it's in a minor key and contrasting dynamics. Okay, let's think about the dynamics to start with for those who are doing maybe grades 1 or 2. But then there's something you could mention even in the higher grades, all right? I want to play you the last line, and can you tell me what happens specifically with the dynamics in the last line? Okay. All right, so There's lots of acceleration and deceleration. That's a good point, Compsomanici. And Laura, loud chordal opening in a minor key, second section melody in the right hand with arpeggiated left hand accompaniment. Good points, good points, good points. Now, let's go to soft to louder at some points, diminuendo and lots of rubato. Right, now, I'm going to pick up on Dennis's last point there. He says there is a crescendo and then decrescendo. There is a crescendo, but there is a subito piano. Now, one of the grade 1 type of questions would be, is the change from loud to quiet playing sudden or gradual? Have a listen again and see if you can notice. Right, there is a gradual crescendo. But then when it goes soft again, it is a sudden change, okay? Right, so that is about the dynamics. Now, also, a very simple question for those doing the earlier grades. Would you say that piece is mainly legato or staccato? That's quite a simple question. Okay, don't worry, we'll get on to harder things as well later, but hopefully you'll all stay because you'll all be doing up the grades. So even if you're a grade 1, one day you'll be doing the higher grades. So it's legato, of course. Right, now that was quite an easy question, and I think anyone doing grade 1 wouldn't have any problem with answering that question at all. Now, I'd like you to think about the time signature. Are there 2 beats, 3 beats, or 4 beats in a bar? I'm going to play you the first section again. Okay, how many beats in a bar? 2 beats, 3 beats, or 4 beats? That would be a slightly tricky question, actually, even at, well, in grades 1 and 2, you're only asked 2 beats or 3 beats, okay? Then in grade 3, it could be up to 4 beats. Right, we're going, a lot of people saying 4 beats, and Dennis is going for 2. Well, Dennis, you've actually got, it's a good point, Laura. There is a very subtle difference between 2 beats and 4 beats, and I'm going to go into this a little bit more. But Dennis got the right answer. It is 2 beats. It's actually a minim beat. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Sorry, I'm trying to count at the same time. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Yeah, it's like you're trying to count the crotchets in here, but the minim beats. 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, that's quite a tricky one because it's so slow, and particularly when you get slow pieces, the beat is harder to hear. Okay. Now, my piano favourites, I went for 2 beats as the note types were different in each bar. Yeah. Okay, so that's a little bit clearer now. Sorry, my counting got a little bit confused when I was trying to play and count at the same time. The second time was slightly better. Okay, so that's the time signature. Now, what about, someone mentioned it accelerates and decelerates, but were there any more noticeable general changes in tempo? Okay, if we go through the whole of this section again, Okay, I'm going to go back because Peter's asking a question here. Peter, how would it have sounded differently if it was 4 beats? Okay, now in 4 beats, something this slow would not really work in 4 beats because it would just be such a long bar. Okay, but if I changed it to crotchet beats, 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4. Now, in 4 time, there is obviously the main accent on the first beat of the bar. On the third beat of the bar, there's like a sort of a sub accent, not quite as strong as the first. And if you notice carefully, if I play it in 4 time, 4 crotchets in a bar rather than 2 minims, there is a slightly lesser accent on the third beat. Have a listen again. Now this is a heavy one. 1, 2 and 3. See, the third beat isn't as loud. 1, 2 and 3, 4. The 3 is less. 1 is louder and 3 is less. Can you hear the difference? Okay. Right, now, thank you, Laura. Second section, I didn't even play it again and you remembered well. So excellent memory there. All right, the second section was più mosso. It is actually, yes, definitely faster. So well spotted there, Laura. The big end of the first section ended something like this. And then the tempo picks up a little bit. Okay, più mosso, faster. Although you wouldn't need to use those words if you were doing like a grade 2 oral test. You just have to say it was faster. Okay, and what about at the end? This last line again. What happens there? Another change of tempo. Anyone? Yeah, rallentando at the end. That's good, Laura. And ritardando, rallentando is meaning the same thing. Okay, gradually getting slower. Now be careful in an exam. Don't say it was slower. Say it slowed down. Or if you can use an Italian term if you like, rallentando or ritardando. Right, it became slower. Because there is a difference between being slower suddenly and getting slower gradually. So differentiate that. You can either use Italian terms or just use the English word getting slower. All right? A little tiny hint there so as not to lose any marks. Now, what about the key? Right, now someone said it started in a minor key. It's a little bit ambiguous here, but have a listen to the first couple of bars again. We seem to arrive at a sort of a cadence point on, is it a major or a minor chord? I'll play that a little bit again. Yeah, it's a major chord there, okay. And then how do we finish this section that I just played to you, the last line again? Okay, again there, are we in a major or a minor key? Yeah, the same again, it's major. Laura's very on the ball today, so well done. Now, here is a question that everyone seems to find, what do I actually say? Because it's such an open-ended question, all right? And it's describe the character of the piece and give some reasons what musical features give the piece its character. And people make more of this question than they need to, right? to describe the character of the piece, you just got to tell me what mood it evokes in you, what sort of emotions. All right? And then you can talk about some musical features that give the music that particular mood or character. So do we have any ideas? What character, what mood, what emotions came out in you when you were listening to this piece of music? Let's see who we got. Laura's normally quite... you see, this is a question where you have to think a little bit more. It's not like a simple answer of major or minor or faster or slower or loud or quiet. You've got to actually put something into a longer sentence. Okay, now Laura's writing a nice long sentence. Okay, it's quite a grand opening in the chords. And there's a contrasting part with the melody. And it seems to shift often between major and minor, so probably a romantic piece. Okay. Now, there's one word you used there that describes the character of the piece, and that's grand, grand opening. All right, so these big, spacious chords gave it a sort of grandioso type feel to it. Okay, what would you say the character of the other section was when it changed a little bit? A contrasting part with the melody. Okay, you mentioned romantic. I'm not sure if you're talking about the period of music. Okay, my piano favourites is asking me to play it again. Okay, we can certainly do that. Just close your eyes and see what emotions come to your mind. Okay, right. Reflective and inspiring. Okay, and Laura, sort of sad and a bit of suspense, yeah? Now, the period is remaining. The second section is a bit more urgent with a change in tempo. Okay, now that's describing character. A sense of urgency comes into there. Okay, but then calmer towards the end. And then, what was it? Owen was saying quite reflective and inspiring. The thing is, with these exams, that's a good answer, but you need to back it up with the musical features that give the piece its character. Okay, so correct, Owen. I would agree with you. Reflective and inspiring. How does the music do that? What musical features make it reflective? And maybe if we could incorporate some of the other answers that people, the changes in tempo, the pushing forwards and then coming back and having a little think about it. You've got this idea and then you want to sort of think about what you've just said, you know? Footsteps followed by gentleness and a sway of sheer dominance in gentle. I'm not quite sure how you mean that by phrasing that. A sway of sheer dominance in gentle. Maybe it was a typo there. But you get the idea? Okay, and the minor key gives it a sort of a sense of melancholy as well. There's a general minor key, but then there's that major moment at the end. So it sort of shifts between sort of melancholy and then a moment of hope at the end with the changes of key. The thoughtfulness, the sense of urgency with the changes in tempo. Okay, so that's the sort of things you could talk about with describing the character. And yeah, and a bit of suspense. Now, how do we create, Ram? Can you tell me, how do we create the suspense musically? What do we do? All right, build up towards a climax at the end, but then it's never quite reaches there. So maybe another sad feature. The music is reflective because of the repetition, and it's inspiring because of the way it starts quiet, and then the next part is a big and louder and broader. Okay, I'm reading your comments here. Yeah, it builds and builds and builds in intensity, doesn't it? But then it's that subito piano. Now that is really a poignant moment in the music. Remember that at the end, we're building, and then suddenly it just drops. And that's what creates the suspense. Okay? And I like that, what you're saying there, Laura. The differences between major and minor makes the music unpredictable. Okay, so very good. Good answers. Now, we've sort of already mentioned the style and the period. So anyone apart from Laura, because you've already said the answer, and I don't know if anyone else was paying attention, but we have basic periods in music such as Baroque, classical, romantic, and contemporary, let's call it, because you can't say 20th century anymore because there's also 21st century. Yeah, now that is correct, romantic period. And Laura, you already had the right answer. But can you say why? Now there's an extra level of understanding. Why was it from the romantic period? What musical features gave you that clue? Just waiting for a little bit of a delay on the internet because your answers don't always pop out as soon as you write them. Okay. Right, so Peter's coming here. Gradual dynamics rather than sudden is one of them. Okay. The sostenuto effect, crescendos, rubato. Now that's what I like. Okay, because you do get gradual changes of dynamics in the classical period. So that wouldn't be a very definitive answer, gradual changes of dynamics. But when you said rubato, that is definitely a much more romantic feature. Okay. Now, there's another one Laura's mentioning. Plenty of pedaling, yes. You do get a little bit of pedaling in Mozart and Beethoven, okay, but it's much more prevalent in the romantic period. And the chromatic notes, yeah, there's quite a lot of chromatic notes. When you have sections like can you hear that chromaticism, and then it clashes with the next chord and then resolves. It's a little bit too much for the classical period. Okay. Also, in the romantic period, you have a much more wide range of dynamics for a start, and also just literally notes. Okay, because we're starting really wide spaced. Yeah, and big spacious use of the keyboard and wide ranging dynamics. That is from the romantic period. Okay. And the quickness of changes of mood, yeah, it's something you just would not get in the classical period. So all very, very good answers there. Now, when you come on to the higher grades, you also have to talk about the texture and the structure. I think the structure of this piece is quite basic, and I think we've probably already inadvertently answered that question. Structure is basically how sections are put together, the phrases and the larger sections. So, how many main sections were there in the extract that I actually played? Okay, the piece does go on longer, but let's take this as a complete piece as it is for the purposes of an oral test. What is the structure of this piece? Okay, there are two main sections. And can anyone tell me the technical word for a piece that in two sections, like A-B form? There's a special word for it. I'll give you a little bit of a clue. If it were three sections, we'd call it ternary form. So what about a piece? No, rondo would be much more involved. Rondo is like A, B, A, C, A, D, A, E. Yeah, that's a rondo. That's it. Binary form. Yes, binary form. Okay. And they're all popping out now. It's okay, Owen. It's how we learn. So that's fine. Okay, so that's in binary form. Now, they might also ask you about the phrase structure. What do you notice about the phrases, the lengths of phrases in the two different sections? How do they compare? Because that might come up in a higher grade. There was a difference in the way that the phrases were treated from the opening section, the slower one, to the second section. There's a little bit of a wait for you to actually get your fingers typing. Of course, this is the joys of live stream. Asking me a question there, Isabel, what grade does texture and structure come in? I think it's grade 6 it comes in. So I can just quickly double check on a syllabus book, but I'm pretty sure. Give me 1 second. I should have one of these just hanging around somewhere. Not sure where my syllabus book has got. Whilst you're writing those answers down. But yeah, I'm pretty sure grade 6 is the one we're talking about. There's grade 6 book. Okay, and yeah, it comes in at grade 6. Texture and structure. It's a new aspect of grade 6 that hasn't been in grade 5 or previously. Okay, so what do you notice about the lengths of phrases? Ah, right, Laura, I think the phrases in the second section seemed half as long as in the first. Yeah, they got tighter, didn't they? They come shorter and shorter. Now, this is another technique of building the intensity. So you might even, if you're really clever, you're talking about the character of the piece and how the intensity builds. And the composer did that. Okay, the dynamics went up, that's the basic obvious answer. But also just shortening the lengths of the phrases. Okay, if you're speaking in very long sentences, everything is quite calm and relaxed. And then if you shorten and put lots of commas in between words, you know, and that sort of type of speaking where you chop things up, it builds the intensity. And you can do that musically as well by shortening the phrases. Okay, so that's good. Now, Dennis, you are starting to talk about something which I was going to ask, the texture. All right. So, again, I'm going to ask you to compare the two sections. And Dennis has sort of hinted at it. Section A uses more block chords and section B had a more melodic line. All right, so how could you compare the texture of this section etc. We know how it sounds. And then this section, how do the textures vary between the first section and the second section? If anyone's not quite sure what we mean by a texture, okay, if you think of structure as being a horizontal analysis, how things relate one after the other, texture is a vertical analysis, how things relate one on top of the other. So how the different parts relate to each other at one particular moment in a sort of like a vertical slice down the music. Okay, or if you like to think of it as a sandwich, what are the different fillings in the sandwich? Is it just one piece of bread with butter, or has it got like 3 pieces of bread and then pickles and ham and all sorts of other stuff? Okay, that's the texture of the music. So, another analogy for you there, Peter. A sandwich with ham and pickle, or whatever you prefer. I think you may be writing long essays for me. But I thought so, because Laura, you always have very nice long answers, and that's why it takes a while to come out on the chat. So much thicker texture at the beginning with big chords. A thinner section in the second section with a clear voice in the right hand and left hand thinner accompaniment. Okay. Do you know the words homophonic and polyphonic? And how do they relate to this particular piece? So, absolutely right there, Laura. A thick texture at the beginning with big chords. Would we call that opening section, homophonic or polyphonic? Homophonic first, and then polyphonic with two parts having, yeah, equal importance. Yeah. Okay, now, you say quite thick at the beginning, but there are moments at the beginning. And then, just like a single line melody, just doubled on an octave. That's not particularly thick, but it is definitely homophonic at the beginning, yes? All right, and then someone mentioned a dual polyphonic. Yeah, generally there are two things going on, and they're sort of like imitating each other rhythmically. You've got like different voices interacting one with another, although the top line would probably be more dominant, okay? So yeah, that is polyphonic. Right, so we talked about the texture and the structure. And Dennis, did you say you were grade 1? So you're doing really well today. Um, these questions are texture and structure. Yes, as I said, grade 6. So excellent work there from those who are doing the lower grades. And it's good that you stuck with us. All right, now, the next thing I want to go on to is, well, we are doing all the grades, William. Okay, so we're doing grades 1 up to 8, including 6 on the way. All right, the next thing I want to talk about, which will come in all the way from grade 4 and all the way up to grade 8, but it's a good exercise for any grade, is sight singing. Now, I can't hear you sing, obviously, on the live chat. So what we're going to do in this particular session is what we call reverse sight singing. That's what I've called it anyway. It's where I will give you a series of notes, and I just want you to name the notes that I play. I will actually cover my hand so you can't cheat and see what the notes are. But if you can work out what the notes are that I'm playing, I'll give you the key in the first note, for example, then in reverse, that's why I call it reverse sight singing, if you see notes, you should be able to sing them. Okay? So we're going to do like a reverse sight singing. And I'm just going to use the first 5 notes of the piece. So I'm going to hide my hand. We're in the key of, well, let's say A minor then, okay? And here is the first note, which is an E. Okay? Now, I want you to just write down 5 letters. The first letter will be E, and then 4 other letters. Okay? And just write down 5 letters starting on an E. There is no key signature. We're in A minor. Hopefully the screen isn't clear enough for you to actually read the music from where you are. I can't see it on my screen. I'm doing on the monitor, so it's just a blur, the actual sheet music. Otherwise that would be cheating also. Starting on an E, what are the next 5 notes? Right. Now Roshana is saying E, A, G, F, E. Dennis, E, B, G, D, E. Wild guess, well it was a wild guess. William, E, G, E, D, F. E, A, G, F, E. Laura, and E, A, G, F, E. Peter. Okay, so actually the last 2 of you, and I think it was actually Narashana first, got the right answer. E, A, G, F, E. Very good. Now, and you're all coming in there. All with correct answers, more or less. It was E, A, G, F, E. So well done, all of you. Now, that is a basic skill, and you can always try this. You know, people find the sight singing element of the grades one of the hardest parts. In grade 6, recognizing a cadence as perfect or imperfect, that's easy. And then sight singing seems like to be a million miles away in difficulty. All right, but you can develop this skill just by wherever you hear music, try and visualize in your head the what the notes are. Okay. Right, now Also, when you do the sight singing, well, in grade 4 and in grade 5 it's in free time, but in grade 6 and 7 and 8 there will be the rhythm involved as well. So if I tell you that the first note was a crotchet, what are the values of the other notes? Okay, start with a crotchet, and then what do we have after that? Because that's part of sight singing. You have to sight sing in time, not just the pitch correct, but the timing. Okay, so F and E are quavers. Yeah, well, the F is a quaver, the E at the end, the last E, would be the last note of the piece. So you could think of it as sort of quite short, but I think I made it quite. So 2 crotchets and 2 quavers. It doesn't actually make a difference if I hide my hand, does it? Because you can't see the rhythm by just watching my hand. I'm not sure why I'm doing that. So crotchet, crotchet, minim, quaver, crotchet. It's not a minim. Apart from that, Laura, you're correct. All right, let's go for the third note. This is the question now. Yes, very good, Naroshana. It was a dotted crotchet. Think about the theory of this, okay? If it's in a 2-time, 2 minims in a bar, you need to make something up to make a minim, don't you? And if you've got a quaver, the dotted crotchet with the quaver will make the minim. All right, so a little bit of theory involved in that. Excellent. Okay. Right, now, if we go from the second line, so we're going to start in a major key, and I want you to tell me what was the modulation at the end of this little section I'm going to play now. So we're starting in a major key. Sorry, I'll do it again. I'm sitting too sideways. Would have helped if I sat on the right note of the chord. So, is the modulation to the dominant, the subdominant, or the relative minor? Major key at the moment. Okay, what sort of modulation was that? Sorry, I confused myself by not going from the beginning of the phrase. Is that a modulation to the dominant, a modulation to the subdominant, or a modulation to the relative minor? Waiting for a little bit of internet delay. This isn't a long one to answer. It's a question that comes in at grade 7. Now, Laura's going to the dominant. Any more offers on there? Right, now, a modulation to the dominant would have a lifting feel to the harmony. It's created by adding a sharp or by losing a flat, which has the same effect, okay? A modulation to the subdominant has more of a sinking feel, and the subdominant would be including an extra flat or losing a sharp from the normal key signature. All right, and then a modulation to the relative minor, the third option, would be you start in a major key and you finish in a minor key, and that's really one of the easiest to actually differentiate. So out of those three, I would have to say we're left with maybe 2 options, because one of them has been taken and unfortunately it's not correct, Laura. But you've done very well on all the other questions. So we've got either the subdominant or the relative minor. Peter Holmes would say the subdominant, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to, well, we're running out of options here. So Who's going to write it down first? Relative minor, Owen. Well done. You get the prize for having the first correct written answer. Okay, it's a relative minor, isn't it? Because the last chord, I'll just play the last phrase. Okay, it's an implied minor key. All right, it doesn't actually have immediate in the chord, so it could be major even, but it's the relative minor. Now, I'm going to do something that's getting a little bit more tricky now. Cadences. Now, in grades 6, 7 and 8, you have to start recognizing cadences. There is a perfect cadence, and that is when you sounds like the phrase has finished. It could finish there. It finishes on the tonic. Okay? And then there is a imperfect cadence. It's when it sounds like the phrase needs to carry on. It doesn't finish on the tonic notes. The tonic, the key note, always sounds nice and complete and finished. Okay? Then there is a plagal cadence, which we call the amen cadence. It sounds finished, but not quite as strong as the perfect cadence. And then there's the interrupted cadence, where you start in one tonality, it sounds like it's about to finish, and then at last moment it goes off into another tonality. So you start in a major, and then the last moment it just veers off onto a minor chord. Okay? So we've got those 4. Yeah. Yes, William, well, don't go back to the beginning, William. Just stay with the live moment and watch it later, yes. Now, so we've got perfect cadence, imperfect cadence, plagal cadence, or interrupted cadence. Now, I'm just going to adapt this a little bit to make it sound a little bit more like an oral test. I'm going to play you 3 chords. Here is your key chord. And I'm going to play you the first 3 chords of the piece. Okay. And if you imagined that as the end of a phrase, would that sound finished or like it needs to go on? Okay, here is your key chord again, and your 3 chords. It sounds finished. So can anyone remember which cadence has that finished feel? Ah, unfinished. Sorry, I didn't read that quite carefully. All right, so the cadence for unfinished would be imperfect, and Ram is going for perfect. Yeah, now I played you a key chord at the beginning, and we finished on the same chord, right? That is the tonic, the key chord. So that would be a perfect cadence. Yeah, it sounds perfect. If it were interrupted, it would have to go to the minor. That would be interrupted, okay, with a minor chord ending if you're starting in a major key. Okay, and then an imperfect, if I went a chord further, sorry, I'm trying to make something up here. And if you finished there, that would be imperfect. All right, that sounds like it needs to carry on. All right. Okay, now this is all very advanced for some of you who are doing lower grades, so it's good practice, and there'll be more of the oral training sessions in the future. Okay, now, getting a little bit more complicated. We did some sort of reverse sight singing at the beginning, didn't we? But now we're going to use the bass line, right, in the key of C major. So here is a key note of C. And the key chord of C. I want someone to name. I'm going to actually move the camera a little bit away so you can't see. I'm going to just stick it up in the air for 1 second. Just give me a moment so you can't see the keyboard. All right. Otherwise you can cheat. I want you to name the 3 notes in the bass. All right. Here is your key chord. Now, what are these 3 notes? Play them again. A, B and C, absolutely correct. All right, my piano player is hard to get clarity on issues of importance from. Right, if you have questions on this at a later point that we haven't managed to cover actually in the live stream, you can always put them in the comments below the video once we've finished, and I'll get back to you if there's anything you don't understand. And Ladybird as well, okay. Thanks for joining us. Okay, and that is A, B and C. I'm going to put the camera back down so you can actually see the keyboard now. There we go. Right, so it's A, B and C. Now this is going to really test your theory a little bit, but could you name then what the last two chords were? All right, so we can have chords 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. All right. If you know a bit about theory, you should know what makes a perfect cadence. What chords are used in a perfect cadence? What were those last two chords? Right, now Laura's going for 5, 7 to 1. And Ram is saying 5 to 1, 5 to 1, Peter Hontaru, sorry, I don't know where I got Holmes from, excuse me, 5 to 1. Now that is sort of correct, but if you're going into the higher grades, if you're about grade 6 or 7, you don't have to do this. But let's just get a little bit more in depth. Sometimes chords are in inversion, we call that. So here is chord 1. Sorry, chord 5. Here's chord 5B. You can hear the bass notes moved up to the middle of the chord, and then here's chord 5C. Now, going back and what you told me earlier about the bass notes being A, B and C, could anyone actually work out the inversion of chord 5 that we just had? Not 1C, because we're talking about the chord 5. 5B, absolutely right, because chord 5 would be a G in the bass. We're in C major, okay? But you said that the bass note was B, which is the middle of the chord, so that's chord 5B. And then it's chord 1. Excellent, excellent answers. All right, now that's basically covered almost all the types of questions that you could get all the way from grades 1 up to grade 8. And if you have any more comments and questions about what we've covered today and you don't quite understand something, just leave a comment in the description, in the comment section below this video, and I will try and get back to you and answer any questions that you might have. But for now, thank you very much everybody for participating. It's been a nice successful live stream. I hope that you've learned something from it, and hopefully we'll be doing something like this again in the future. But for now, we're just going to sign off and see you all soon. Thanks for watching.